Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you the stories that matter from across the world, shining a light on the biggest issues and controversies. I'm Kerry Johnston, live from the Firstpost studios. But first, a look at the day's headlines. Iran denies US President Donald Trump's claim that the country is negotiating a nuclear agreement with a set deadline. Earlier, Trump had given Tehran an ultimatum to reach a nuclear agreement or face military action. Russia confirms a new round of talks with Ukraine and the United States in Abu Dhabi over ending the almost four-year war. Moscow says the talks will begin on Wednesday after they were postponed last weekend. Gaza's Rafah border crossing with Egypt reopens, allowing only limited movement of Palestinians in and out of the war-ravaged territory. Tibetan holy leader the Dalai Lama wins a Grammy for a spoken word audio book on spirituality, recorded from exile in India. Beijing calls the award a tool for political manipulation. And the Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte faces another round of impeachment complaints after surviving multiple attempts against her removal last year. After weeks of breaking records, gold and silver prices have pulled back sharply. And that has left many people wondering, is this a chance to buy or a warning sign to sell? Well, to understand what's happening, let's take a closer look. Over the past few months, gold and silver went on a remarkable run. Prices climbed almost every day. In India, gold moved close to 1.8 lakh rupees per 10 grams. Silver crossed 4.2 lakh rupees per kilogram. Globally, too, gold touched record levels, moving past the $5,000 per ounce mark. In commodities markets, such rallies rarely last forever. And last week, the market reminded everyone of that. After India's annual union budget yesterday, both metals saw extreme price swings. In fact, this was their sharpest single-day fall since 1980. Both gold and silver slipped as investors wondered if the recent gold rush had reached its peak. And even global prices cooled off. Spot gold fell about 7%, settling near $4,500 an ounce. And spot silver declined to $76 an ounce. So why did this happen? The biggest reason is something very simple. People started taking their profits. Many traders had bought gold and silver much earlier at lower prices. So when prices surged to record highs, they decided to cash out. But this does not look like a collapse. It's more like a correction. Think of it as a market catching its breath after a sprint.
The key question is whether this marks the start of a structural downturn in commodity prices or merely a correction. We see it as a correction and a buying opportunity rather than a fundamental shift.
Despite the cooling prices, the broader picture remains supportive. Governments are under fiscal pressure and geopolitical risks are high. And easy money policies have not completely disappeared. All of this still supports gold and silver in the long run. In India, the union budget did not change anything for precious metals. Import duties remain at around 6%. But speculation about possible changes added to the volatility. Well, now the focus shifts to what comes next, including the Indian central bank's policies, US jobs data, and the performance of the manufacturing industry. They will decide whether precious metal prices stabilize or swing further. Interestingly, buyers are already stepping in. Gold is finding support at around 1.59 lakh rupees. Silver is holding around 3.6. Support refers to a price level where buyers tend to step in. Prices of precious metals do not keep falling endlessly. At certain points, buyers start trading when they think the price is low enough. Well, this helps stop the crash, or at least slows it down. Well, that tells us that demand hasn't completely disappeared. Well, gold is often seen as stable and finite, but the last few sessions are a reminder that precious metals can fall as quickly as they rise, and that's the real story. Not panic, not euphoria, just a market reminding us perhaps that every rally, no matter how strong, eventually tests the nerves of those chasing it. Well, for more on this, we have with us Mitali Nikor, who's an economist and the founder of Nikor Associates, joining us live now from New Delhi. Welcome to the programme. So how do you gauge the fortune of gold and silver right now? What are investors actually thinking, in your opinion?
No, absolutely, Carrie. I loved your report just now and such a balanced perspective. I fully agree with this. What we are seeing in the markets today, and I want to really differentiate between gold and silver. You know, this is really critical because a lot of times we tend to club them and we tend to find reasons why gold and silver are moving differently. So I think let's talk about silver separately and gold separately. When we look at the silver demand, a massive set of silver demand comes from institutional and industrial buyers. We can see that industries such as semiconductor industries, electronics industries, artificial intelligence data centers, these are all big consumers of silver. And what we saw in the previous 2 quarters, Q2 and Q3 of 2025, we saw that, there was a little bit of a reduction in the supply side. Now the suppliers of silver have understood that this is not just a cyclical increase in demand. This industrial demand is here to stay, and there has been a shift in demand. And we saw the supply easing towards November, December of 2025. So quite clearly, the silver, is moving in that direction. On the other hand, when we look at gold, it's a slightly different story. We saw a lot of portfolio investors invest in gold. We saw a lot of central banks, increase their purchases of gold in 2025, given the, situation with the geopolitical scenario, with the uncertainties in the global economy. And we saw that, gold was seen as a safe haven, a safe asset, and every portfolio investor wanted a bit of gold, that little gold dust sprinkled on their portfolio. So really, I think from that perspective, again, we see that cycle adjusting, and we see, the fact that a lot of that portfolio balancing has actually taken place. So I think the reasons for both are quite different.
Okay, you touched on this a little bit there. How strong a factor do you think are world political events when it comes to investor sentiment?
No, I think that, this is one of the biggest drivers. The geopolitical scenario is really one of the biggest drivers for the fluctuation in gold and silver prices, but particularly gold prices, like we discussed just now. At the end of the day, when a president of a country can overturn the entire trading system, when the president of a country can come and literally take another sovereign president, to their country, take them away from their country, take over the oil operations in that country. I mean, we are looking at, in the words of Mark Carney, the rupture of a global economic and trading order. So in such a scenario, of course, investors will rush to safety, and of course, investors will want, their portfolio to be hedged against such geopolitical risks.
You mentioned the central banks briefly a little bit earlier. I mean, what about individual countries then? How do governments decide their strategy when it comes to stockpiling gold, perhaps?
So I think, this is something that I was actually researching quite deeply last year. And what we found is that several countries, including India and even China, were big buyers. The central banks of these countries were actually bigger buyers of gold than even, banks and institutional investors. So we actually saw, huge increase in the stocks of gold in these countries. And there are certain national benchmarks that these countries have started putting. So we find that India, for example, puts a benchmark that at least 12% of the money supply in circulation should be backed by physical gold. Similarly, China has different benchmarks, other countries have different benchmarks. So each country has its own national benchmark, but we typically find that at least 10 to 20% of the money supply in circulation is being backed by physical gold for most countries.
Mitali Nikor, we appreciate your insights. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
The United States has announced the opening of the H-1B visa registration for 2027. It comes with key changes to the selection process and a possible steep new fee for some employers. Indians form the largest share of H-1B visa holders, and the new rules are expected to impact them the most. The H-1B visa allows US employers to temporarily hire foreign professionals in specialized occupations. The registration period for 2027 will begin on March the 4th and then remain open until March 19th. Well, under the rules, employers or their authorized representatives must register each beneficiary electronically through a US Citizen and Immigration Services or USCIS online account. A registration fee of $215 per person will be charged, and submissions can only be made once the registration window officially opens. Well, US Immigration has clarified that only the employers whose registrations are selected will be allowed to submit the actual H-1B application. Selection results will be declared by March 31st, and notifications will be sent directly through the online accounts of eligible petitioners. For 2027, a new weighted selection system is in place. If applications cross the 65,000 annual cap, then preference will be given to higher skilled and higher paid workers.
The Department of Homeland Security published a final rule amending the regulations governing how USCIS selects H-1B registrations for unique beneficiaries who can then file H-1B cap subject petitions. The new H-1B selection process prioritizes allocating visas to higher skilled and higher paid aliens to better protect the wages, working conditions, and job opportunities of American workers.
Well, separately, US Immigration Services say that employers filing selected petitions may be required to pay an additional $100,000 fee. This is linked to a proclamation issued by President Donald Trump in 2025. Well, while this fee does not affect the registration process itself, it could apply before the final petition is filed. The H-1B visa has remained under close scrutiny under the Trump administration. Since September 2025, measures ranging from sharply higher visa fees to stricter background and social media checks have made the process far more demanding. For many foreign professionals, working in the United States is no longer a straightforward pathway, but an increasingly selective one. So with tighter rules and a stronger focus on skill and pay, the H-1B program now reflects a deep policy change from the Trump administration and the broader push to limit access and prioritize only the most competitive global talent. Now we continue with the latest on Balochistan. India has strongly rejected Pakistan's claim that it was linked to the wave of attacks by the banned Baloch Liberation Army, or the BLA, over the weekend. Pakistan has been accusing India of supporting Baloch separatists to carry out attacks on Pakistani soil, a charge that New Delhi has repeatedly denied.
We categorically reject the baseless allegations made by Pakistan, which are nothing but its usual tactics to deflect attention from its own internal failings. Instead of parroting frivolous claims each time there is a violent incident, it would do better to focus on addressing long-standing demands of its people in the region. Its record of suppression, brutality, and violation of human rights is well known.
On January 31st, Pakistan's restive Balochistan province was rocked by a wave of coordinated gun and suicide attacks. The attacks triggered massive security operations. Pakistan's government says at least 31 civilians and 17 security personnel were killed after the rebels launched near-simultaneous attacks across multiple cities and towns. Pakistan's Interior Minister, Mohsin Naqvi, accused India, saying New Delhi is backing and orchestrating these attacks. The attacks struck a wide range of targets, including police stations, a high-security prison, hospitals, banks, markets, and paramilitary installations. Well, the attacks spread across several districts, and in Mastung district, insurgents attacked a prison, freeing more than 30 inmates before fleeing.
बेले वालों ने आया हमारे साथ खिड़की मिड़की छोड़ के अंदर घुस गया, फिर हम लोगों को मार के इधर मार दिया, सर में भी मार दिया, फिर हम लोगों को वर्दी भी उतार, बोला वर्दी उतार के निकलो, फिर हम लोगों ने वर्दी उतार के फिर हम लोगों को बैंक से निकाल दिया इन लोगों ने.
In a statement released on February the 1st, the Baloch Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for the attacks. It describes the attack as part of Operation Heroth Phase 2. The BLA claimed that more than 200 personnel from Pakistan's army were killed during the operation. It also claimed that 17 security personnel were captured alive. Pakistani authorities, however, have not confirmed these claims and have issued different casualty figures. The statement also said that 18 BLA fighters were killed during the operation. The BLA said some operations have been completed and its fighters have returned, while operations remain ongoing in other areas. And in a fresh development, BLA released images of 2 suicide bombers, both of them women. The group also released a video it said contained the final message of one of the bombers, claiming it was recorded around 12 hours before she was killed. The Pakistani security forces responded with large-scale operations. They claimed that at least 145 attackers were killed over a period of about 48 hours. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif praised the military response and vowed to continue the fight against what he described as terrorism. Balochistan's chief minister on Sunday said that security forces are still pursuing insurgents and claimed hundreds have been killed over the past year.
ओवरऑल तो आपको पता है कि पूरा साल जो हमारी कारकर्दगी रही उसमें कोई 1500 प्लस जो है टेररिस्ट मारे गए हैं और उसमें 58,000 छोटे छोटे स्मॉल ऑपरेशंस जिनको आईबीओस कहते हैं वो किए गए हैं.
The Balochistan Chief Minister, Sarfraz Bugti, also pledged an uncompromising response to violence.
They want us to surrender. We will not. हम 1000 साल तक ये जंग लड़ेंगे. This country is ours. This is our motherland. We'll fight for it. हम 1 सेकंड के लिए भी सरेंडर होने को तैयार नहीं है. ये इस तरह के 1000 हमले हम पर कर लें, डिस्टेबलाइज करेंगे हमें, लेकिन they cannot take an inch from us.
Islamabad has also claimed that insurgent groups use Afghan soil to launch attacks, an allegation rejected by Kabul.
Promised with the world, your land will be not used by any terrorist force against any state. But unfortunately, आज अफगानिस्तान की रियासत पाकिस्तान के खिलाफ इस्तेमाल हो रही है. और अभी हमारे पास इनिशियल इतलात हैं, डिटेल रिपोर्ट्स आएंगी. बहुत सारे लोग ऐसे हैं जिसमें इनके साथ अफगानी भी शामिल हैं.
Well, for context now, Balochistan makes up nearly half of Pakistan's land area, but is home to a small fraction of its population. The region is rich in natural resources and has long been gripped by what Pakistan calls a separatist insurgency. Analysts say the roots of the conflict goes back to the early years of Pakistan's formation. Locals argue that the region's resources have been extracted to benefit other parts of Pakistan, leaving their communities with little infrastructure, high poverty and scarce opportunities for development. Community leaders say they're underrepresented in federal politics, ignored in decisions involving their own land and resources, and subjected to a heavy military presence and security operations rather than political dialogue. Well, in the end, whether Balochistan's future moves toward political engagement, economic stability and an end to the violence, or sinks deeper into conflict, remains unclear. Well, finally, we shift our focus to Bangladesh. For decades, the country stood apart in the Indian subcontinent because it was often steered by a female leader, Sheikh Hasina and Khaleda Zia. Well, for years, the country was led almost continuously by these two women, but that era has now ended. Khaleda Zia passed away in December, and Sheikh Hasina was ousted from power in August 2024 after a violent uprising that brought her long rule to an abrupt halt. With both women gone, a vacuum opened, and into that space stepped old conservative forces. Loud and emboldened, enter Jamaat-e-Islami. As Bangladesh heads to parliamentary elections on February 12th, Jamaat has made its position clear. Women, it says, cannot lead. Speaking at the Election Commission, Jamaat's Women's Wing secretary said the party follows Islamic principles, principles which, she argued, do not allow women to serve at the top. Notably, Jamaat-e-Islami has fielded no women candidates in the coming elections.
According to the Quran, men are directors of women, which is considered a command and obligation in Islam. Real change comes when leadership, whether male or female, is humane and ensures dignity for all.
Meanwhile, Jamaat chief Shafiqur Rahman wrote in a now deleted social media post that pushing women into public life leads to exploitation. He described women in public office as a form of moral degradation akin to prostitution. Well, the post was deleted following a swift backlash. Jamaat later said the message was misleading, claiming that the account from which it was sent had been hacked. He insisted Jamaat supports women in education, healthcare, administration and public service. But the signal had already landed and the timing mattered. Because since Sheikh Hasina's fall, Bangladesh's minorities, especially Hindus, have come under attack. In 2024 alone, over 2,000 incidents were reported. And last year, rights groups counted more than 500 communal attacks and 61 killings. The government under Muhammad Yunus disputes the characterization. It says most cases are criminal, not ethnic in nature. But for those on the ground, the numbers offer little comfort. As Bangladesh prepares to vote, women are being told that leadership is not their place. Minorities are being told that their fear is exaggerated. Well, the era of powerful women shaping the country appears to be fading. The promise of protection is uncertain, and the question now is not just who governs Bangladesh, but who is allowed to feel safe in it. That's all we have time for on the show today, but we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Bye-bye.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
Hello